In Miller, South Dakota, a teenager named Abby stood in front of a room full of adults to share a new idea for her community. She and her friends wanted an indoor movie theater. But this is a town of 1,400 people, so this is a real challenge. And as she stood in front of the room full of adults and shared her excitement and her enthusiasm with her community, one of those adults said to her, in front of everyone, "That idea is too big. It is never going to work, and you shouldn't even try." Now, I would like for you to be shocked by this, but you're not shocked. She's like, not even. Because people have done this to you too, haven't they? People have put brick walls in your way. Never have heard anyone say these things. We tried that once. In 1974. That's not how we do things. That'll never work here. Slow down, let us ask more questions. Give us more time to talk it over. So let me ask you, do you think that that adult hated Abby? No, you're just like right on top. No, they didn't hate Abby. What were they trying to do? They were trying to protect Abby from something. Failure. They were trying to protect her from failing in public where it would be embarrassing. And that'd be embarrassing for anyone. But in order to help her and protect her, they told her not to even try. And that is something that I don't think we realize often enough. The people who sound the most negative may think they're helping you. They just don't have great tools to do it with. And so they fall back to, we tried that once, and that'll never work, in an attempt to help you avoid failure. And you may be tempted to agree with at least part of that, maybe at least like slow down and let's ask more questions, but it's a trap. And it's a trap because we are terrible at judging the risk of failure. Author Margie Worrell said, using the latest brain imaging technologies, doctors have been able to look into our brains and see we are far less likely to fail than what our own minds tell us. So while we're warning people not to try things, we are overestimating the risk of failure. And the other thing that our brains are really, really bad at is establishing the risk of sticking with the way we've always done things. They assume it's just fine. But that is the risk that Will Rogers pointed out when he said, even if we're on the right track, we're going to get run over if we just keep sitting. So while we're talking things over one more time and one more round of questions and writing one more plan, the world is changing around us. Because the decision we have to make is not between where we are right now, where we're safe, and change, which is somewhere over there and very scary. The decision we have to make is between the change we're going to create when we decide to act, and the change that's coming at us while we fail to act. So while we're doing this, waiting to see how things change, one of our best ways to keep moving forward is to tap the excitement and the ideas and the caring of our own people. And there are people doing amazing things. State Senator Sharon Shoemake, that's tough to say, Sharon Shoemake, State Senator. She has to introduce herself that way. When I met her at a conference of legislative ag leaders, she said, when I got elected, I thought it was my job to do cool stuff. And it turns out it's to empower other people to do cool stuff. And that gives me a great deal of hope for what we're able to accomplish because people are doing cool things right now. This is a photo of the big town near me. I do live in Hopeton. It really is 30 people. We're not exaggerating. The nearby big town about 10 miles away is Alva, Oklahoma, population about 4,000. And this is our playground with play equipment that my mother remembers from her childhood. Okay, so does it look safe? There's a group of moms who looked at this and said, that is out of date and unsafe. And look at that jagged sheet metal on the front of the boat. I'm just really surprised I don't have like a scar on me somewhere from that boat. But so those moms just started a message group. They didn't try to like start by forming a 501c3. They started a text message group and started sharing ideas with each other. Let's figure out a way that we can do this. And you might not think that this would be terribly controversial. They're destroying our church childhood icons. The moms did not get distracted or taken off track. They started with their first small step, which was, oh, I did it, I bounced it, sorry. Look, they saved the boat. Maybe they're okay. This actually turned around a lot of the negativity because they did save the boat. This was their first small step. This was something they could accomplish the most easily. You don't need $1 million to repaint the boat and remove the sheet metal and put a landing zone around it so it's a little safer of a boat. So those moms did not know it, but they were using the idea-friendly method. And over the past 10 years, they have redone the play areas all across the parks with new equipment and amazing things. And so they've built their way up from those small steps with the first paint job for the boat to these amazing new play areas. And it's taken them about 10 years. They finally formed a 501c3. They worked with the city, alongside the city, but they did not become a city committee. This was the excitement and love of these parents for their children and for the town. And this is that idea-friendly method. You gather your crowd with that big idea, like, wow, I wish we had some better play equipment. And then you use it to gather your crowd when you invite them to join your message group or whatever you have to bring people together. And then you build connections. And this is how we find the resources that we need. We build connections, asking questions. Who knows somebody at City Hall? Who do we know that can write grants? So making those connections, and then each of them getting to take a small step. Somebody can volunteer to make flyers for a fundraiser. Someone can research online. Everyone can be involved in small ways. And that's the idea-friendly method. And it's a way of tapping our people's love for our communities. And Sanjay Changwani said, people don't fall for cities. They fall for the versions of themselves that the city lets them become. So what makes you fall in love with your city all over again? What are the things that you love about your team? But what is the old way that we gather people to work on an idea in the community? The committees, the public meetings. Oh my gosh, we're gonna invite people to be on committees, or we're going to tell them they're on committees. Also popular. I honestly got an email from an organization just a month ago, and it's like, if you have any interest in serving on a committee, please fill out the attached volunteer information form and select one committee from the committee list. And then the chairman will reach out to you for further discussion. Does this sound like a way to get people to love what you're doing or to tap their excitement? Or is this a really great way to make everybody go, there is no way I'm touching your committee interest? So that's the old way, is to serve on committees. I feel like there's a better way. So the new way is to become a movement that people can get behind. I've been using your photo all over the face of the earth. I'm so sorry. So about, 8 years ago, Elena Turpin sent me an email when she worked for the Chamber of Commerce in State and Sublimity. And she sent me, we were talking about the idea-friendly method, and she said, we've killed off the committee structure. We have almost no year-round committees. She's nodding. It's true. I'm not making this up. Ask her later. They don't have year-round committees. Why would they need them? They only activate groups when they need them for a specific thing. Is this how it worked? See, look, we have independent verification for the first time. This really is true. Elena said, we spend more time telling people how we make a difference in the community. How different is that than see our committee form? Elena said, then your organization becomes a movement that people can get behind, and not just a volunteer opportunity. What a difference. What a difference. And what this looks like in practice is the difference between committees and activities. So I was working with Caldwell, Kansas, which has a population of about 1,000 people. And we had probably 50 people in a room, and there were folks that are like, I don't know everybody here. And I'm like, well, we'll do introductions. So we go around the room, everyone introduces themselves, and people who were like my age and older introduce themselves by the committees that they serve on, the organizations that they are members of. So one gal said, I'm on the Chamber of Commerce Executive Committee, I serve on the Historical Society where I volunteer, and I'm on the Alumni Board, which is how we have introduced ourselves for a long time. But then I noticed as we kind of got to the back of the room, there were people my age and probably younger who introduced themselves by the things that they enjoy doing. So there's a gal there named Laura who said, I like to garden, and she sounded really uncertain because she didn't have organizations to point to. She's like, some friends and I do a book club. Oh, and I have a little free library. So she's talking about things she likes to do. These are activities she enjoys. And so if you want Laura to volunteer for you, she's not going to see the attached committee list because that's not an activity she enjoys. But if you tell her that there's an opportunity to do some gardening, she may be in because it's something that she likes. So we want to move from assigning people to committees to tapping their interests with activities that they will enjoy doing. And you can do this the best at the site of whatever the idea is. The moms that were redoing the playground once did a really great fundraiser where for $5 you could go out and put your handprints or your kids' handprints on the retaining wall out at the park and put your name. $5. But it was at the park. And so, it was kind of fun to take your kids out, have their handprints put up there, get to put their name. Kids would like to see their name up there. But this brought, I'm sure, some new families to the project. But because they were at the park, what could they do? They could point and say, the new toys will be right over there. Oh, and look, I have a picture right here on my phone. This is what it's going to look like. So that enabled them, by being at the site, they could engage more people in understanding and seeing the concept than what they could do with any meeting room or flyer or post on Facebook. So how could you take the idea that you said engaged your love and your heart for your community? How could you do an activity at the site that's most closely related to it? So we're going to build connections. This is how we find the resources we need. Because it's not enough for me to have an idea and even a crowd with me that want to do it if we have no resources whatsoever to make it happen. So we have to build connections to find those resources that we need. And the old way to do this is to make a presentation to some board. I don't know why we think we have to do this, but people have new ideas and they bring them straight to the city. They're like, put this on the city council agenda. I'm not sure why that's the starting point so many times. But there's an economic developer in Idaho named Jessica who told me that she was dying to get a microbrewery. And I think she's in the only town in Idaho that doesn't have a microbrewery. So she wanted to see this, and she was asking people like, hey, would you like to start a microbrewery? It hasn't happened yet. So the traditional way for Jessica to proceed is to go to the board she works for, because she works for the economic development group. She can present it to the board meeting. The board can ask her a lot of questions because it's essentially a decision machine. You put that new idea in at the top, and then it triggers all these questions that you have to answer. And so that you have to go through everything that could possibly go wrong with a microbrewery throughout a 20-year time period, right? Like if you can't plan it out that far, then you're going to face a lot of questions about it. So She can present it to the board, they can go through their list of questions. If they like the idea, they can refer it to the subcommittee on business development. The subcommittee on business development is gonna do what? They're gonna debate it again. They're gonna ask probably a lot of the same questions. Jessica's gonna answer them again. They're gonna discuss it. If they like the idea, they can send out for the feasibility study. So now the expert can pull the numbers from the public database, they can plug it into the template, they can send it back, fill it in, put a picture of her town and a microbrewery, right? And then at the bottom is the conclusion, the same as all feasibility studies, which is, it depends. And then that can go back to the subcommittee. So we're back at the subcommittee for business development. They can review the feasibility study, they can see if they like it, they can ask Jessica the same questions again. She can answer them again. If she's lucky, they'll approve it. It'll go back to the main board. So we go back to the main board. They can review the feasibility study, the recommendation of the subcommittee, and they can debate it, and they can ask questions. And then they can vote to put it on the 5-year plan for business development, right? That's the 5-year plan. So then ultimately, Jessica's best hope is to be assigned to issue incentives and try to steal a microbrewery from another town or encourage someone to open a brewery in their town as a branch. So in my way of thinking, starting by going to the board is talking to the wrong people when you're still at the idea phase. When you're still at the idea phase, who should we be talking to about running a microbrewery? People who like to brew beer. People who brew beer at home. So why don't we start a home brew meetup in somebody's backyard and say, bring your beer, come have a good time. What are they gonna do? They're gonna talk. They're gonna drink beer. And after 2 beers, maybe 3 beers, somebody in that group is gonna go, I could run a microbrewery. And everybody in the club is gonna say what? Yeah, you should totally run a microbrewery. But then they're gonna say one more thing, which is, how can we help? How can we help? They're gonna be the ones that make the introduction to another brewery in another town that's doing something interesting. Let's go meet the owner at that one. Or they'll say, oh, I know somebody at the state that deals in regulations around this. Oh, I know a supplier that we should talk to. Oh, I'm really mechanical. I'm gonna help you set up things, right? All of that help is gonna spring naturally from people who already cared about the thing. And the board could offer none of that to the home brewer. That can only come from their peers, from their own crowd, and building those connections with each other. And you can do this with entrepreneurship as well. When you connect entrepreneurs with each other, you get what we call the rural or local. If you're a big town, you can call them the local jobs creation strategies. So this comes from Brownsville, Texas, which is a big town. They have a group of business owners who meet in each other's back rooms. They meet monthly. They get to meet in each other's back rooms. So they get a tour of everybody's store and they see what they sell. And then they can ask questions. What are you doing about returns? What's your favorite wholesale app? And so they get answers to their own business challenges from people who understand what they're going through because they're doing it too. And that kind of connection with resources who understand what you are doing is the essence of how we create jobs in rural areas today. And that's why we call it the Rural Jobs Creation Strategies, because I get to make up my own names for these things. So how could you build connections? You've got an activity that's going to be happening at a place. How could it build those conversations where people say, how can I help? Now we get to take small steps, and this is where it gets really fun because lots of people get to play a small but meaningful role in the idea itself. And so this is where it really becomes fun. So what is the first step when I said how do you start on any idea? And I was going to talk about committees. I think it was you who said hold a public meeting, right? The other way of doing that is also hold the public meeting and write the plan, right? We've got to write a plan. We've got to know exactly how it's going to all play out over the next 10 years at least. before we can start on any action. If we want to do one improvement to the downtown, we need a comprehensive plan for the entire downtown before we do a picnic table. So this is the kind of thing that we're talking about. So how can we like maybe do a new version that is not quite so plan intensive? Because trying to outthink failure dooms us to fail, Executive Ed Catmull said. Because we can never know enough. How do we think we know what's going to happen in 10 years? How's that 10-year plan that you published in early 2020 looking? What'd you say?
Needs update.
Needs an update. Using it as a doorstop currently, right? So we can't outthink failure. It's going to get ahead of us. But what we can do is we can take small steps and learn to do by doing. So this is one of my favorite stories, right behind Elena Turpin. The next favorite story comes from Tionesta, Pennsylvania, which has a population of about 500 people. And this was an entire block of their downtown. This was solid storefronts, and it burned. And they lost the entire block and 4 active businesses in one night. Tionesta is 500 people. There's only 3 blocks of downtown. This is a major deal for their downtown. The Industrial Development Authority was trying to find almost immediately a developer who would redevelop this block for them because it's so important to their downtown. It's a town of 500 people, bordered by a river on one side, a highway on the other, national forest on one side, and foothills on the 4th side. They're not going to be growing outward. They got laughed out of every developer's office in probably a 3-state area and got told no. They spent 10 years trying to find somebody to build anything on this lot and getting told no. And finally, one of the board members said, I saw this place where they had businesses in little bitty sheds. We could put those on the empty lot. And then if a developer showed up, we could move the sheds. It would be a small step in the direction of getting buildings back on the site. And here's what they did. And I don't know if you can see how cute they are. They're super cute. It just so happens there's a woman named Julia McCray, who is not related to me, who is an artist. She is a watercolor artist, and she serves on their Industrial Development Authority. Get an artist on your Industrial Development Authority. Because she is the one who said, okay, if we're going to do sheds, can they be really cute? And so they found a local carpenter to put the false fronts on them so they look like little downtown buildings, and then they painted them in really cute colors so that they're so cute. People who own buildings across the street were like, we need to repaint, time to spruce up. And they did. Like, that's such a big win for the town. And there's a cafe across the street who said, oh my gosh, there's people staying at the sheds into the evening. They were open until sundown. The cafe's like, we better be open later hours. And if you're in a small town, you know that's a big win too. What a huge win. They got it by taking the small step of getting the sheds. And I think their entire grant funding was $50,000. That's what they did. The dirt work, bought the sheds, they did the fronts and the paint. The Lions Club did some landscaping for them. Their electric utility, shout out to PGE for sponsoring the talk, but their electric utility made them a deal of how they would do electrical drops for each of the sheds. So they just used their own resources, did this really small step. It has been there for 12 years now. So what if a developer shows up tomorrow? Should we move the sheds? No, we're going to keep the sheds. There's got to be other lots in town, right? It has incubated their own local artisans. There was a pottery maker that started there, and they went and bought a house in town because it had a big garage that faced the street, so they had to move to a bigger location. And then there's the bakery from 2 towns over that brings fresh baked goods into their town every weekend all summer. Yeah, right? Like, bring the baked goods. We want it. You know, there's Amish jams and jellies, which is really awesome. I have been fortunate enough to visit the market, the Tionesta Market Village. It's every bit as cool as it sounds. There's a barbecue joint in a shed in Tionesta, Pennsylvania. This is the kind of thing you can do when you're open to the new idea of taking small steps and seeing how things go. Could they have predicted at the very beginning how this would work out over the next 12 years? No, they're doing shopping with the llamas. Whose plan did that appear on? It's a really great little story. So they got to do that because they were innovative about it. And so when you take those tiny businesses that are temporary, look at what an incubator this is for pop-up businesses for their town. And those are tiny and temporary businesses, and I call that the innovative rural business models, and there's actually more to it, but it's ways that we can create businesses in rural areas that doesn't rely on venture capital funding or, what all the things that people say that you have to do to start a business. I just want you to start a barbecue joint in a shed and tie my stuff. Okay, and lots of those things will fail. There have been businesses that were in sheds that are no longer in business. Right? That's a failure. That's a business failure as counted by the statistics. But it was a really small failure. And so it didn't cost the person a ton of money. So if we keep the size of our failures really small, then the cost of failure is very low. And so then failure becomes that kind of high quality research showing us what works and what does not. So how can you make a small step that goes with your idea? When I was in Pullman, Washington, some of y'all probably know where Pullman is. It's not super far from here.
Go Cougs!
Some of you cannot be restrained. We're going to insert a Cougar cheese reference here. It's going to... So I was in Pullman. This was the first time I went to Pullman, and I was doing some work with the Inland Northwest Partners group there. And before I got there, I cannot tell you how many Pullman people told me, very embarrassed, like kind of as an aside, they're like, we have a dirty sidewalk problem downtown. It's like a social disease. We have a dirty sidewalk problem downtown. Which I understand, because they're kind of a hillside town, so anytime it rains, stuff washes off the hillside and through there and down and up onto the sidewalks. And so it does actually bring quite a bit of trash into the town. So as we're walking around, people are like pointing, every time we see trash, they're like, oh, here's some trash, we're really sorry. We should do another cleanup day was kind of the refrain. And so when we got done with walking around, we went back to the room, and so that was the discussion is, we should do another cleanup day. When, who wants to take the lead on that? And it was nobody. Nobody wanted to take the lead on it. And then one guy, and this is not allowed, one guy takes it and throws it across the room. He's like, your organization organized the last cleanup day. You should do another one. I said no. You do not get to assign other people their priority. If you don't want to do it, then maybe it doesn't need to happen. Because it's not your priority. And we sat quietly, uncomfortably for a bit. And then a business owner named Willow, who is actually in this photo, and there's no way you can see her. She's at the back against the wall. There's a white tablecloth with some flowers on it, and Willow is behind the flowers. She is not a towering presence in this room. But she raised her hand and said, I will sweep my own sidewalk. And I said, great. That may not be the same as a cleanup day, but you know what it is? It's a start. And so I suggested to Willow that she do clean her own sidewalk, but take pictures. Put it on the social media of her choice, which was Instagram. I said, tag 2 friends. And you can hashtag it, Clean Your Own Sidewalk Day, and make it into a movement. Thank you. See, it's Clean Your Own Sidewalk Day. I was on Wednesdays in Pullman. A whole bunch of other people started doing. Willow started a movement that people could get behind. It was not a volunteer opportunity. It was just Willow and her friends sweeping their sidewalks. And since they were doing it on Wednesday afternoons, then the city, noticing that this was going on, started sending around the street sweeper early on Thursday mornings and picked it all up out of the gutter. See how smart that is? But what if Willow, while we were all walking around, had said, hey, forget about doing a cleanup day. Let's all sweep our own sidewalks. You're going to sweep your sidewalk. You'll sweep your sidewalk. Let's all sweep our own sidewalks. Oh, and you're with the city. Can you change your work schedule for the street sweeper because we're going to all clean our own sidewalks? What are people going to say to that? My favorite answer so far, yeah, no. That's a no. That's going to be a hard no, right? So that is not what she did. Willow did not try to change anybody's minds. Willow didn't try to convince anybody of anything. Willow swept her own sidewalk. And this worked. This worked for Pullman for like 5 or 6 years. This was enough energy that they were still doing sweep their own sidewalk day. How much better is that than a single cleanup day? They still went ahead and did a cleanup day later, but the sidewalks were clean almost all of the year because they were all sweeping their own sidewalks. But she didn't try to convince them, she enticed them. It was more like the social media challenge, and rather than a silly dance, it was sweep your own sidewalk. And that made all the difference. Dr. B.J. Fox says if we make the size of the step that we ask people to take match their level of motivation, then they are able to act. But if we make the size of the step we ask them to take much bigger than their motivation, will they do it? No, we won't do it. And so as long as we keep focusing on looking for these very few special people who are willing to give it all, we're missing out on all these people who could help us out just a little bit. And so that's why I say make the size of your step that you ask people to take really small. Make the small steps even smaller. So how could you do that with your idea? You may have written some small steps. Maybe you can find a way to make it even smaller until it's just like sweep your own sidewalk. This morning in this room, we spent an hour talking about the people who do not want to help at all. The people who not only have small motivation, but like if it's possible to go into negative motivation territory, that's where they are. And the number of people who came up to me after that workshop to say, there's always some people who will not help. And I am here to give you this message. Those are not your people. You cannot lose people who were never yours. I hear people all the time, they tell me how they're going to great lengths. They don't want to upset people. They don't want to lose the people who are against them, the people who are already angry. They don't want to lose them. Those are not your people. And you cannot lose people who were never yours. You want me to do it again? You getting it? Are you feeling it? You're not sure? Ask me how I know. Because I used to be the city administrator for Winoka, Oklahoma, population 993 people. Great little town. And after they fired me, then I got to watch the city council fight about how much stuff they could tear down that we had done. A friend asked me yesterday, how did you feel about that? I was so angry, you have no idea how angry I was. But that didn't change anything, did it? Okay, so after that, I bought a liquor store. I did a whole different thing, right? So I went into the town of 4,000 people and bought a liquor store. Y'all just are so unhappy that I don't still have the liquor store because I used to hand out samples. So yeah, the liquor store, oh my God. So there's two great things about the liquor store. One, it's not being city administrator. Two, I was working, and I am not kidding, 35 hours a week. Do you know what I was working as a city administrator? Because I never figured it, but it was like not, but it was way more than that. It was a lot. It was a lot. So like I had all this time on my hands. So it was 2006. Anybody old enough to remember 2006? So it was 2006. I went online because I had great internet at the liquor store. So I went online. I joined Twitter. We didn't even have names or hashtags yet. So like I was online, and then I poured myself into volunteering in the community. My alumni board said, "You have more time. You're president of the alumni board." So that was great. And then I was like involved in a women's professional association, and so I served on that board and I on the national board. So like I was doing all this community work, and yet I was doing online work, and I was running a liquor store, and I was still not working as much as I had as a city administrator. But I noticed this gap. So in the traditional organization, it took us a full year to plan an event. To plan the next conference, a full year. You're laughing because you've been on the full year plan, right? It takes a full year to figure out the next event and get it planned and actually make it happen. And then some friends and I online put on an event for like 200 people in a small town. It was all high-tech small town people that gathered in a small town in Kansas. It took us 6 weeks. We did that in 6 weeks. Now, I was staring across the Gulf from 6 weeks to a full year going, there's been some changes and not everything has kept up with it. So ultimately I got disgruntled with like trying to do things that old way. So I actually ended up dropping off of all my boards because I was trying to learn what was the new thing that was going on. And so I spent about 9 years, like reading everything I could get my hands on, and so I read tons of books on change management and crowdsourcing and like how can crowds of people do things. I did my own research with the Survey of Rural Challenges. I was involved in a lot of conferences and events around technology and around rural revitalization and cool stuff, anything that caught my interest. So I didn't actually have a plan for any of that, but it's one of those things you look back on and go, this makes total sense, because where it led me was the idea-friendly method. And that was 10 years ago that I came up with the idea-friendly method. I've spent 10 years refining it, taking in input from people just like you from our Survey of Rural Challenges. It's been going for 10 years now. Over 2,200 people have shared their own challenges and assets. And the sum total of all of that is what I've figured out that actually works today to build a stronger community, and that gives us the best hope in the face of division. And that is that you build a stronger community through experiences that bring people together from across different groups to each play a meaningful role. Now there's 3 key parts to that. There's the experiences, because adults learn by experience. We have to have something that we do that then we can think how that went. We reflect on what we did. So we need an experience so we have something to reflect on. If it brings us together across different groups, then we have the opportunity to meet new people, to maybe expand our thinking just a little bit. It's really hard to be hating on people while you're standing next to them painting butterflies on a mural. But it can be done. But it's your best hope. And then if you play a meaningful role, then it's yours, you're part of it, you're being engaged, and you start to see yourself in a new way. If you played a small but meaningful role in it, you see yourself as being the kind of person who plays a role in your community. And so when you bring all 3 parts together, that's when it starts changing things. And we need multiple opportunities for this to happen. And so if we can put all 3 of these parts into more and more things that happen in your community, it's going to add up to change the shape of your community. We're going to gather your crowd so that they're together for a shared experience. We're going to build connections so they're reaching outside the groups that they have been in. And then we're going to get everybody to play a small but meaningful role so that they see themselves as being the kind of people who care about and do things in their community. And do you know what that is? It's the idea-friendly method! Yay! Okay, so to me, that's the thing that makes hope. You've already started on how you could do that with an idea in your community. You just didn't think about how this one idea could reshape the way your community connects with each other. Could reshape the conversation in such a more positive direction by gathering your crowd, building connections, taking small steps. It all comes together. Now, people look to you for answers. This is the nature of working in a city or serving on a council. People look to you for answers. You do not have to know all the answers if you can stay open to new ideas. As the challenges change, new ideas will become our best way to address those new challenges. And so we don't have to know what those answers are, as long as we'll stay open to discovering those new ideas and new answers to what is coming at us in the world. And being open to new ideas also means letting go of judging ideas. So when someone comes to you with an idea that you think is stupid, instead of saying, that'll never work, it means to say, just kind of pause for a second and say, how could you take small steps? See, this would be more polite, wouldn't it, than stomping on people's ideas. But it would also let you discover some amazing stuff. So do you remember Abby in the movie theater that I mentioned at the beginning? The teen who wants an indoor movie theater in a town of 1,400 people. See, Abby actually had a big advantage over the adult who told her not to even try. Because Abby had heard me and Deb, my co-founder, present the idea-friendly method at a conference, and so she knew how to take small steps. They went to the school, they borrowed the school auditorium, and then they picked a movie for little kids. And they invited the grade schoolers to be their audience. And so for one day, Abby and the other teens ran a movie theater. They ran the concessions, they ran the ticketing, they ran the projection, they did the whole thing themselves. And for one day, they created that indoor, sit-down, movie theater experience for the little kids. Because it was something that Abby and her friends wished they could have had when they were kids. And when you tell people not to even try their idea, you miss out on the amazing experiences that your community can create together. The question we have to ask ourselves, author Margie Worrell said, is how will inaction cost us 1 year from now? Can you still hear me? How will inaction cost us 1 year from now? What is the cost of sticking with the status quo, the way that we've always done things? What's going to happen to us? So this is Winoka, Oklahoma. Do you remember Winoka? The year after they fired me, they came to me and asked me to write a grant for their downtown. I said yes, but in my head, I said, my rate just doubled. So the new mayor, who had nothing to do with all the stuff that I was involved in, actually came to the back room of the liquor store and sat down with me and talked about her vision for improving the downtown. And I wrote that grant. And they got it. See, I really did help. I'm not awful, as far as you know. And so the thing that killed me about that was then I watched in the newspapers. I don't live in Winoka, I live nearby, so I watch in the newspapers as the city council gets to the point that they've picked their architect who has shown up at the city council meeting carrying 3 sets of plans all rolled up and dropped them on the city council chambers table and said basically, pick one. Right? I'm sure there was a presentation. I'm sure it was lovely. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I do know they spent almost a year trying to decide which one of those sets of plans. Now you shake your head, but you've also seen this happen. So what is happening to the value of the grant dollars that we all work so hard to get them? Yeah, there they go. Oh, it's almost a year. It took almost a year. So here is what I thought we should have done. Now keep in mind, I am a woman running a liquor store at that point. I thought we should take a copy of the plans and a roll of duct tape, and we should go downtown, we should look at the plans, and then we should mark it off on the sidewalk with duct tape and go, it says there should be a ramp, so we're gonna duct tape it. Who can make the duct tape noise for me? Right? And duct tape it on the sidewalk and label it ramp. And where there's supposed to be some plants on the plans, can we borrow some potted plants off your porch? See, you were gone. We took your plants. Sorry, we put them out here. We'll give them back. It says there should be bricks, Do we have some of that, like they make contact paper that looks like bricks? Like, do you have some chalk? Can you draw bricks and like write bricks? And then can we have a pop-up fair and like have a whole bunch of like temporary businesses in the downtown and invite the entire town down to walk around, and then we can go, hey, what do you think? Look, it's gonna have bricks right here. It says bricks, look, ramp, what do you think? Right? And we can walk around. Can we spot problems before we've committed to actually building them? Can you spot those problems on the paper plan? You might. You've had some training. You've had opportunity to look at plans. Even engineers look at plans and go, oh, let me picture it. Hold on. So that is the real life rendering. Instead of just one static drawing or rolled up sets of plans, we can see it, we can walk around in it, we can tell how it's going to be. We can do the same thing with plan number 2 and plan number 3. We can all get a chance to see what it would be like for our community. Because if we make a mistake, how long will we live with it? 20 years, right? Like minimum. So, you have to test these things. Do you know why? Because your community is different from my community. And even if you borrowed the plans for the streetscape for Winoka and you tried to use them somewhere else, they're not going to work. What's more, how long do you suppose that engineer or architect spent in Winoka before they drew the plans? Like a day? Like maybe they did a visit? And then we have to live with that for 30 years. We need to do these tests because even experts can never know our town as well as we could. So we have to do small tests like that. And the differences between like a fishing village in Maine and a mining community in Nevada and across both sides of Oregon are bigger than the differences between big cities. So we have to run tests. And if you don't take anything else that I said, please take this one. It will never go back to the way it used to be. We start from here and go forward, one small step at a time. Thank you for pouring your hearts into your communities, and thank you for letting me be one small part of it. Thank you. Most favorite project I've ever heard of. Okay, so Winston did this really cool project. They have a paper newsletter. Winston mails these separately to every resident in the town. You have a mailing address, we're fixing to send it to you. And it is so cool, oh my gosh. Here's the new business in town. Ooh, that's nice. Okay, organizations in town that could use your help. How cool is that? Okay. A message from the Urban Renewal Agency. Notes from the Winston-Dillard Water District. Construction will start in November on Carey Street to install a new water main line. How many people knew that until they got their newsletter? Like, nobody knew that. And then under that, message from Public Works. Work continues on the Looking Glass pump station. These are important information pieces to go to the community. You feel so much more like you're part of the community and you're involved. Here's a thank you for serving our country and protecting our freedom because it was Veterans Day. Look at this. What's happening in town? The Winston Shopping Center Antique Mall is undergoing rejuvenation. They're mailing these everywhere. Do you know what happens when they don't get their newsletter? They are storming City Hall. Where's my newsletter? I need to know what's going on. So this is like one of my new favorite things. I just love this.